And I gave her the biggest hug that I could. And when she saw me, she was like, oh man, finally somebody I see that's on my side.
Right, they can relate.
She was getting hit with everything left and right. And I just said, I hugged her. I said, I'm so proud of you.
Welcome back to WNBAcore. Today's story is sending massive shockwaves across the WNBA, with stunning new details and fresh updates placing Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham right in the middle of a national conversation. Fans everywhere are asking tough questions, and these recent disclosures could fundamentally shift the entire narrative. What is actually taking place behind closed doors, and why has this topic captured everyone's attention? Stay with us until the very end as we unpack every detail, reaction, and breakdown you need to know. So, without wasting another moment, let's dive straight into today's analysis. A story that was never meant to reach the public light doesn't originate from a polished PR release or a standard sports headline. It begins with an embrace. When Cheryl Miller wrapped her arms around Caitlin Clark, it was far more than just a tender moment captured on broadcast cameras. To the casual observer, it appeared to be simple empathy. However, for those watching closely, that single embrace shattered something vastly larger. It cracked through the carefully built wall of silence constructed around one of the most controversial sagas in WNBA history. Because that embrace wasn't merely comfort, it was defiance. It stood as a clear declaration, unmistakable sign that a calculated effort had finally been exposed to the entire league, to veteran roster members, and to every hidden force involved behind the scenes. Whispers had been circulating for months. An unusually high number of physical fouls were routinely ignored. Multiple commentary voices suddenly went quiet. Time after time, Caitlin Clark, arguably the most transformative rookie the sport had ever welcomed, was left isolated, unsupported, and systematically undermined. When dedicated fans and analysts began noticing the recurring patterns, league insiders started revealing fragments of what resembled tactical psychological pressure rather than standard rookie initiation. Within insider circles, it was referred to as Operation Balance. And when Cheryl Miller stepped forward, even if only to deliver a supportive hug, she validated what millions had suspected but could not officially prove, that Caitlin Clark was fighting more than just opponent game plans on the hardwood. She was battling an entire ecosystem engineered to break her composure, diminish her superstar status, and alter the natural future of women's basketball. That embrace pulled back the curtain, changing everything instantly. It laid bare the fractures in a narrative the league worked tirelessly to maintain. And behind that veil sits a strategy so structured and intense that it redefines how you view professional basketball. Once you see how every piece connects, it becomes painfully obvious that none of this was accidental. This wasn't mere bad luck, nor was it the standard physical welcome every newcomer experiences. What sources indicate is that it was systematically structured, methodically executed, and deliberately pushed to suppress Caitlin Clark's meteoric growth. Leaked internal documentation, actual recorded notes from within league networks, pointed toward a blueprint labeled Operation Balance. The core objective? To ensure no single athlete, regardless of global draw or generational talent, could alter the power dynamic away from established league veterans. This strategic plan rested on three distinct pillars. First, constrain Caitlin Clark's visibility across mainstream outlets. Ensure her historic court achievements were overshadowed by veteran narratives, maintaining control over primary sports headlines. Second, permit heavy physical contact without standard referee whistle intervention. Obvious infractions were reinterpreted as routine, high-intensity defense. Third, enforce emotional isolation, approach far more damaging than anything occurring between the baselines. The goal was to sever her connection from teammates, strip away on-court allies, and steadily wear down her confidence. This is deeply concerning because it transcended basketball. It had little to do with traditional competitive spirit or protecting the paint. It was systemic pressure disguised as athletic competition. This was the exact reality authorities were hesitant to make public. According to insider accounts, this initiative wasn't driven by a single franchise or a few rogue players. It was synchronized, systematic, and encouraged at leadership levels higher than most realized. Breaking a rising star requires continuous, incremental pressure. Over time, self-doubt begins to creep in. That was the precise mechanic driving Operation Balance. Yet, the flaw in this strategy didn't stem from Caitlin Clark herself. It was triggered by an unscripted moment, an unguarded sentence from a player who let slip far too much. That individual was Sophie Cunningham. Every covert strategy eventually encounters a breaking point, and for Operation Balance, it arrived in the form of an accidental slip. Sophie Cunningham, widely recognized for her aggressive and physical play style, had no intention of exposing one of the league's most guarded subjects. But during what was presumed to be a non-public exchange, she voiced something revealing. Her comments provided clear indication that the physical handling of Caitlin Clark was calculated rather than coincidental. Sources revealed that Sophie Cunningham acknowledged a very distinct message circulating inside the Phoenix Mercury locker room: "We are going to teach her what this league is truly about." At first glance, that might sound like standard trash talk or routine rookie initiation. But examine the context carefully. Caitlin Clark did not require validation of her skills on the court. The true motive was delivering a systemic message. Rather than spontaneous competitive energy, those words carried strategic intent. The Phoenix Mercury were preparing for more than a standard regular season matchup. They were stepping up to execute an environment quietly condoned across the league. As a result, Phoenix became a primary testing ground for this strategic approach. On their home court, physical contact was far from random. The dynamic was fully intentional. Every sharp contact, every dismissive gesture, and every uncalled whistle served a larger blueprint designed to test how much pressure Caitlin Clark could absorb before visible frustration set in. This is where the narrative becomes undeniable. Sophie Cunningham's slip perfectly aligned with leaked internal communications. The timing, the phrasing, and the underlying intent matched seamlessly. And Phoenix was hardly an isolated case, they were merely one link in a broader chain running across multiple cities. Insiders report that similar guidance was communicated to at least 6 other locker rooms across the league. The directive remained uniform: protect established veteran dominance, keep the marquee rookie isolated, and never allow Caitlin Clark's overwhelming media shadow to disrupt the traditional league hierarchy. Suddenly, those contentious on-court moments lost their randomness. Hard contact to the midsection, intentional trips, and the complete silence from teammates during high-tension moments were not standard growing pains. They were targeted actions in a scenario Caitlin Clark never asked to participate in. Sophie Cunningham's unscripted comment brought all of this to light. What fans had debated online for months was confirmed by a single candid admission: Caitlin Clark wasn't just facing tough defense, she was walking into a pre-planned landscape. While statements reveal motivation, concrete data provides absolute proof. Because while narratives can be contested and leaked conversations minimized, hard numbers remain completely objective. The statistical record from Caitlin Clark's rookie campaign doesn't just prompt questions, it completely exposes the reality of Operation Balance. Throughout the 2024 season, Caitlin Clark drew an average of 4.5 personal fouls per game, a metric significantly higher than virtually any high-profile rookie in modern league history. To put that into proper context, while incoming players naturally face physical play as they transition to professional speed, this went far beyond standard adjustment. Caitlin Clark wasn't merely being tested, she was absorbing physical punishment at unprecedented metrics. Here is where the data shifts from unusual to statistically extraordinary. Caitlin Clark alone was the recipient of 17.1% of every flagrant foul called across the entire league. Let that sink in. Nearly 1/5 of the most dangerous, high-impact fouls across an entire professional league were committed against a single rookie player on a single team. That is not accidental variance, nor is it a simple run of physical luck. That level of concentration requires intentional focus. The mathematical probability of that distribution occurring naturally is virtually non-existent. It is the statistical equivalent of flipping a coin 100 times and having it land on heads 80 times. At a certain point, reasonable observers stop calling it random chance and begin recognizing intentional target selection. Furthermore, the issue wasn't solely the frequency of these fouls, it was their precise timing. A massive portion of these hard hits occurred at moments specifically calculated to disrupt momentum. They were executed right as she started building offensive rhythm, right as the team gained energy, or immediately following a viral highlight play. These were physical interventions designed to yield psychological fatigue. Even her initial professional field goal was quickly buried beneath intense physical play. Instead of celebrating a monumental moment for the sport's growth, opponents doubled down on physical intimidation. The analytics show that as soon as Caitlin Clark proved her elite capability, the physical target on her back expanded exponentially. Success didn't ease the pressure, it activated the next phase of the operational plan. According to internal communications, Operation Balance did not wind down when Caitlin Clark demonstrated she could withstand physical contact. Instead, it adapted. Hard hits were only the initial step, the strategy shifted toward deeper leverage points. The plan was constructed around 4 distinct, calculated phases, each engineered to push Caitlin Clark toward an absolute breaking point. Phase 1, Physical Intimidation. This was the most visible stage. The goal was simple: force the rookie to absorb continuous physical contact until she questioned whether her body could endure the physical demands of the league. Late physical contact, heavy fouls, and hard screens were routine, all while officiating crews frequently looked the other way. The unwritten message was clear: you haven't earned your place here. Phase 2, Media Suppression. When Caitlin Clark proved resilient against physical play, the focus moved toward controlling narrative exposure. Major milestones were minimized, and highlight distribution was curtailed to preserve spotlight space for veteran figures. Media personalities who previously praised her athletic profile shifted their framing, adopting remarkably unified talking points regarding her need to earn respect or highlighting minor rotational errors. This wasn't organic sports commentary, it was narrative management. Phase 3, Emotional Isolation. This represented the most damaging phase of the strategy. Information from inside indicates that team members were quietly encouraged to keep their distance from Caitlin Clark. There were minimal high-fives and huddles, muted celebrations following her major plays, and a noticeable lack of intervention when she was knocked to the floor. It was a structured effort to make her feel entirely unsupported inside a system trying to break her resolve. Phase 4, Psychological Breakdown. The ultimate objective went far beyond physical play, it targeted mental endurance. Leaked exchanges outlined continuous negative pressure tactics designed to exhaust Caitlin Clark until she began doubting her core capabilities, her place on the roster, and her long-term future in professional basketball. If she ultimately opted to step away from the sport, the initiative would achieve its ultimate goal. Each phase built systematically upon the previous step: bruise the physical body, restrict the media spotlight, withhold emotional camaraderie, and cultivate self-doubt until walk-away thoughts enter the mind. The sophistication of this strategy lay in its subtle execution. In isolation, no single incident looked like a broad conspiracy. But when analyzed sequentially, they formed a pattern far too consistent to dismiss. Yet the deepest damage was occurring away from public view, inside locker rooms, team travel, and quiet moments off the court. If Phase 1 impacted her body and Phase 2 restricted her visibility, Phase 3 cut directly to personal morale. Insiders confirmed that Caitlin Clark was systematically excluded from spaces designed to build trust and chemistry. She was left off casual group messaging, excluded from informal team meals, and absent during player-led leadership chats where veteran perspectives were shared. Imagine entering a professional sport carrying unprecedented global expectations, only to meet cold distance and quiet exclusion inside your own team space. That goes far beyond poor team chemistry, it is structured alienation. Veteran players were allegedly given clear implicit directives: keep interactions minimal, don't rush over when she hits the deck, and avoid integrating her into the core social group. The psychological toll was evident. Witnesses noted instances where Caitlin Clark sat quietly on the bench while teammates conversed around her. Sources close to her indicated there were moments where she privately pondered if pursuing this professional path was worth the immense isolation. The public footage confirms these accounts. Revisit the widely circulated clip where Caitlin Clark was knocked flat to the floor by a hard foul. Camera angles caught multiple teammates looking away, walking in opposite directions without offering a hand to help her up. While commentators attributed it to early season communication issues, sources reveal it was Operation Balance on display, publicly demonstrating her isolation. The strategy didn't pause there. Opposing veterans actively monitored her body language, searching for visible signs of frustration or fatigue to exploit. It was calculated psychological pressure. The outcome mirrored the original strategic design. Caitlin Clark began pulling back, privately questioning her place in the league. But the campaign was not complete. Beyond locker room dynamics and physical play, an even broader effort was unfolding across officiating standards and broadcast media. Officials were reportedly under subtle pressure to allow additional contact against Caitlin Clark, withholding quick whistles when physical play escalated while quickly penalizing her whenever she voiced frustration. The broadcast data reflects this clearly. Clear physical infractions against her went uncalled, yet the moment she raised her hands in reaction, a technical whistle followed immediately. At the same time, central media channels coordinated talking points. Prominent figures, including legacy names like Cheryl Swoops, repeated remarkably similar phrases across independent platforms, questioning her readiness or downplaying her generational impact. When multiple independent outlets mirror the exact same phrasing simultaneously, it points directly toward coordinated media narrative management. Furthermore, veteran player groups initiated synchronized social media timing, posting specific content to overshadow Caitlin Clark's record-setting nights or amplifying clips that framed her natural reactions as negative body language. It was, as one insider described, full-spectrum pressure, physical on the floor, psychological in team spaces, and reputational across media channels. However, the strategy ran into an unforeseen obstacle when a legendary figure chose to reject the unwritten script entirely. For months, isolation had been the norm for Caitlin Clark. Then came Cheryl Miller. When Cheryl Miller walked onto that court and pulled Caitlin Clark into a genuine embrace, it did far more than provide comfort. It shattered the structured narrative. That single moment highlighted the stark contrast between artificial distance and authentic mentorship. While others maintained silence, a basketball icon chose active empathy. The reaction across league circles was instantaneous and telling. Elements of the veteran establishment criticized Cheryl Miller for breaking ranks, demonstrating just how fragile the push against Caitlin Clark really was. If a single embrace from a legend could create that level of institutional anxiety, it completely destroyed the narrative that Caitlin Clark was simply experiencing normal rookie friction. It proved that her isolation was manufactured. By standing beside her, Cheryl Miller changed the momentum. The embrace offered cover against the psychological fatigue, signaling that Caitlin Clark was no longer standing alone. When physical tactics and media framing began losing efficacy following Cheryl Miller's public support, the push against Caitlin Clark shifted once more. Physical blows became slightly less overt, replaced by subtle tactical exclusion, fewer set plays designed for her, delayed passes that put her in tough defensive spots, and refined narrative shifts framing her legitimate frustrations as emotional weakness. Yet despite every layer of resistance, Caitlin Clark remained relentless. She continued hitting long-range shots, directing offenses, and driving historic viewership numbers night after night. Every success became an act of pure resilience, proving that elite talent combined with massive fan backing could not be engineered out of the narrative. What began as a quiet attempt to control a rookie's rise has exposed a deep divide within professional women's basketball, an established structure attempting to preserve existing dynamics versus a generational athlete pulling the sport into an unprecedented global spotlight. Ultimately, league power structures do not decide who becomes a legendary figure, the global audience does. Millions of fans tune in every single game, demanding to see extraordinary basketball unhindered by institutional friction. Caitlin Clark isn't waiting for permission from anyone. She is defining her own legacy with every performance, every record, and every game. The ultimate question remains, will the sport fully embrace this transformative wave, or will history record this era as a missed opportunity to elevate the game to heights never seen before? Thank you for tuning into WNBAcore. What are your thoughts on this situation? Drop your opinions in the comments below, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping the league.